Rebound here. Just a quick recap. Yesterday was terrible. It was by far my worst day on trail so far. Maybe the worst day in all of my 3 hikes so far. It rained all day. It was so cold, and the water drenched me through my rain gear. Toward the end, I was hiking as fast as I could to try to generate some heat. I had just, the night before, I had some service in the meadow where I was tenting, and I watched part of a video talking about a couple of hikers that got hypothermia this year in the Smokies, and one of them had to be rescued. So that was uppermost in my mind, and I just hiked as fast as I could. When I got to the shelter, I looked at the shelter, thought about my tent, looked at the shelter, thought about my tent, and I just knew I had to take everything off and get into my quilt. So I ended up setting up my saturated tent. The floor was completely saturated. The walls were completely saturated. The rain fly was completely saturated. I really dislike setting up my tent when it's that saturated. So what I usually do when it's saturated, the floor is all wet, I tried to wipe up as much of it as I could with a bandana, and it was sprinkling all the while I was doing this. And then I lay down my rain skirt and a little piece of plastic that I picked up out of the hiker box at Neil Gap on my last through hike attempt. That thing has been a lifesaver, but that gave me a dry place so that I wasn't setting my sleeping pad onto a wet floor. I put that onto the plastic, and I put all of my electronics and everything else that's in Ziplocs on the rain skirt at my head. So it took me a long time to get warmed up. This morning, I could not bear the thought of putting the hiking clothes that were saturated back on. I knew I had 6.5 miles into Irwin. I knew that it was supposed to rain again today. So what I did was I just wore my base layer, which is synthetic, and put my shorts on over those. And thankfully yesterday when it was raining, I had not put on my fleece hoodie. So I was able to put on my fleece hoodie over my base layer shirt and then my rain gear. And thankfully it did not rain hard or the way into Irwin. I did not eat breakfast or have coffee because I didn't want to stop in the shelter. I couldn't do it right outside my tent because it was raining. Didn't want to stop because my feet were still wet. I had dry socks, but the minute I put them into my wet, muddy shoes, they were wet also. It was so miserable. When I finally got into Irwin, I went to Uncle Johnny's and I was going to get they used to have a little coffee maker there. I was going to buy a muffin or something, but they've completely changed their little store. Regardless, when I first got there, it was closed because the person running it was cleaning. So I sat outside on their little porch there, lit my alcohol stove, and I had my coffee and oatmeal. And it was really good. Then the guy came from cleaning and opened up the store, and it's completely different in there. They have freeze-dried meals, a few tuna packets, a few ramen stuff, and they did not have their coffee maker anymore, and they did not have the pastries and stuff that they used to have. I do know that they offer a shuttle into town for hikers that want to resupply, and that shuttle goes in 2 or 3 times per day, so that's probably why they've cut back. I knew that I probably could not check into the hotel until later, just because the time they don't let you check in till about 3. So that's one reason I decided to go ahead and have my oatmeal there at Uncle Johnny's. I wanted to buy some fuel at Uncle Johnny's, and he at first told me they didn't have any denatured alcohol. For some reason, nobody is using an alcohol stove anymore, so any of you who do use an alcohol stove, which I personally love, just be aware that there are some places that are not carrying the denatured alcohol. However, he did say that he had some heat that was his personal own. Heat is some kind of additive that goes in cars that is actually denatured alcohol. So the auto parts store is one place where you can get your denatured alcohol if you need to. You just need to buy the yellow one, not the red one. So anyway, he sold me that. It hadn't even been opened, and he says, I'll charge you about $2. And I had $3 in my hand. I said, well, I'll give you $3. He says, okay, that's fair. So I did get my denatured alcohol. Then I walked the 1.3 to the hotel, and when I got here, she said that I could not check in yet, and she said I couldn't check in until 1. So I asked her if I could go ahead and do my laundry, and she said sure. So I was able to do my laundry, and a short window of sun came out so I could dry my tent. And it is little things like that that happen almost every day that tells me that the Lord is watching over me and He's guiding things and He's got my back. And that doesn't mean that everything is always going to happen just like I want, because it doesn't always. But when those little things like that happen, sun in the midst of rain, is just a little reminder for me that He does have His hand on me and this hike, and I just thought I would share that with you. I probably should share more of those little things, but I don't know, I guess I think that some of you might think it's just a little insignificant or coincidence, but it's not insignificant or coincidence to me. So I got all of that done, and it was all finished right about 1. So I was able to get into my room and take my shower, my long, hot shower, which I very, very much enjoyed. I used a whole little round cake of soap in that shower. I cannot tell you how glad I am to be in this room. I'm continuing to dry out my tent. I didn't want to fold it all up if it was still just a little bit damp. I had to lay out my sleeping pad because it was wet. My backpack is completely drenched. Everything is just a little wet. So I'm drying everything out. I went through my box, started organizing that. I cleaned up my thermos and my spoon, and I always wash off my water filter and the Sawyer bag and the baggie that it's in, because it's always got leaves and little bits of stuff in it, and so many little things like that I can't even think to name. Little things that need to be done that I did. And then I went and got lunch next door. It's right next door, extremely reasonably priced, huge portions. At this Mexican food restaurant, I got fajitas, and it came with rice and beans and sour cream and lettuce and pico de gallo, and they even gave me a bag of chips and a little cup of salsa. Well worth the money, and it tasted so good. Usually on the trail, I have to force myself to eat because I am just not hungry after hiking all day. I'm always hungry for breakfast. Sometimes my coffee and my oatmeal are what get me out of bed. The thought of that, because I enjoy it so much. In the evening, not so much. But last night, when I was so cold, I had one of my best meals that I've had so far, of my dehydrated meals, and I was hungry. It was chicken Alfredo, and it had macaroni and an dry Alfredo sauce, broccoli, and dehydrated chicken, and it went down really well. So I think that's pretty much caught you up on all of the happenings today. I am so very grateful to be in this room, and I'm so grateful for showers. I'm so grateful for washers and dryers. My sleeping quilt last night was touching my wet backpack and my feet, so the end of it got wet. I'm drying that out also. So I'm just so grateful for everything. I'm so grateful also that the Lord was looking out for me while I was drenched and in the cold, and I did not get hypothermia. It can happen so easily out there, and that too is another reason why I know that He is watching out for me out here, putting things in my mind to do with decisions. I am going to stay a second night here. It's supposed to rain very hard tomorrow, so I think it's wise to avoid the rain while it is cold. I'll do it in the summer, and it rains so much on the AT, you can't avoid the rain, but yesterday it was scary, and I don't want to do that again. So I will be staying here tomorrow. And I guess that is it for today's report. This is Rebound, signing out.